with emotional momentum. I didn't expect to still be at the office when the lights outside turned orange. Most of the floor had emptied hours ago, but I was still sitting there with my sleeves rolled up, a half-finished report glowing on my laptop. The air conditioning had long gone quiet, leaving only the soft hum of the old ceiling fan that wobbled whenever it spun too fast. I wasn't planning to stay late, not really, but she asked. My boss, Elena, mid-40s, sharp suits, the kind of woman who never looked rushed even when the whole building seemed to be leaning on her. People moved differently around her, lowering their voices, straightening their posture. I was no different. She didn't have to raise her voice to get what she wanted. She had this way of asking where no felt out of place. That evening, she leaned against the doorway of my cubicle and said, "Stay a little longer. I'll need your help organizing tomorrow's briefing." Her tone wasn't demanding. It was casual, almost like she knew I would. So I stayed. We worked side by side in the conference room, the long table scattered with folders, coffee cups, and a single desk lamp that threw more shadow than light. She sat across from me, glasses slipping down her nose as she read. I typed, pretending not to notice the way she tapped her pen when she thought, or the way her perfume lingered faintly in the stale office air. There wasn't much conversation at first, just papers sliding, chairs shifting, the occasional reminder from her, highlight that section, or put that on top. But after a while, something softened. "You work too carefully," she said, not looking up. I glanced at her. Carefully is bad? Not bad. She pushed her glasses up with the edge of her finger. But you hesitate, like you're waiting for permission no one's going to give. I wasn't sure what to say to that. My mouth went dry. She didn't say it harshly. It sounded more like she was observing me, almost too closely. I muttered, "Maybe I'm just cautious." She finally looked at me, and it was longer than I was ready for. Not a stare, just a pause. Eyes that seemed to weigh whether I meant what I just said, or whether I even believed it. The air felt heavy in that second. Then she smiled faintly and went back to her papers. "Cautious isn't always safe," she murmured. The rest of the night blurred. We finished organizing, stacked the folders neatly, erased the whiteboard. But that moment didn't go away. Her glance, her half-smile, the way her voice dropped low like she was letting me in on something I wasn't supposed to know. I kept catching myself noticing small things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she bent over the files, how her ring tapped against the edge of her mug. My hands itched to do something, but I gripped the pen tighter, pretending I wasn't distracted. She noticed, I think. At one point, she slid a folder toward me and her fingers brushed mine. Just briefly, maybe by accident. But she didn't pull away right away either. We both froze. And then she cleared her throat, stood and said, "That's enough for tonight." I packed up quickly, trying to act normal. My heartbeat betrayed me, though louder than the silence of the room. When I stepped outside into the cool night air, I found myself replaying everything. Her tone, her glance, the pause that lasted too long. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. On rising suspense. The next morning I tried convincing myself it hadn't meant anything. A brush of hands, a look that lingered, things that happen in passing, things you forget. But when she walked into the office later that day, heels clicking, coffee in hand, I caught myself staring again. She was my boss. That fact kept repeating in my head like a warning bell. She could make or break my future here, and I knew it. Yet every time she glanced my way, even briefly, it felt like the room tilted just enough to throw me off balance. By the time evening came, most of the staff had gone. I was ready to pack up, but her voice stopped me. "Can you stay a little longer?" She didn't ask like a boss. She asked like someone who didn't want to be left alone. We ended up in her office this time. It looked different at night, softer somehow, the usual authority of her space dulled by the lamplight. A stack of personal papers sat open on her desk, not work files. I noticed a half-written letter, a photograph turned face down. She quickly shifted a few things aside as if I hadn't seen, but I had. Her shoulders slumped for just a second before she straightened. I need your help sorting through these. I nodded, though my eyes stayed on the photo she'd hidden. She caught me, her mouth pressed into a line before she gave a short laugh. Divorce papers, she admitted quietly. Not exactly part of your job description. I didn't know what to say. She'd never let cracks show before. Sorry, she added softer. You shouldn't have to see that. I shook my head. You don't have to apologize. The words came out quicker than I meant, and I hated how much they revealed. She leaned back in her chair, studying me, and for the first time she didn't look like the woman who commanded rooms. She looked tired, human, and maybe lonelier than she'd ever admit. I busied myself with the papers, but my thoughts kept slipping. I noticed the small tremor in her hand when she lifted her mug. The way her perfume lingered differently in the still air of her office. Less sharp, warmer. The faint crease near her mouth that deepened when she wasn't smiling. Details no one else would have paid attention to. Felt wrong, all of it. Wrong that I was here, wrong that I noticed. Yet I didn't move. We worked quietly until she reached across the desk, placing a file in front of me. Her fingers grazed my sleeve this time, deliberate or not. I couldn't tell. The touch was light, but my chest tightened like she'd caught me thinking every thought I shouldn't have. Her voice was steady when she said, "Stay a little longer, please." For a moment, I almost asked her why, but the question lodged in my throat, heavy and dangerous. Instead, I just nodded, even though my hands trembled when I picked up the next paper. It closes on the edge of crossing the line. The office felt too quiet that night. Just the two of us again. The hum of the desk lamp filling the silence like it had a weight of its own. She was seated across from me, her reading glasses low on her nose, the papers between us barely touched. I pretended to focus, but my eyes kept lifting. Watching the way she traced a finger along the edge of a page, the way her lips parted slightly when she read in silence. I wasn't supposed to notice those things. I reminded myself of that every time my gaze drifted, but the reminders were useless. She set the papers down with a sigh, leaning back in her chair. Do you ever feel like you've built a whole life and then realized it wasn't the one you wanted? I looked at her carefully. It wasn't the kind of question bosses ask their employees. Her tone was low, almost fragile. I think about it sometimes, I admitted, unsure why I said it. Like maybe I'm walking down someone else's path, not mine. Her eyes lifted to mine. For a moment we just stared. Two people who weren't supposed to have anything in common, suddenly sharing something too personal. The air tightened between us. My throat felt dry. I wanted to say something more, maybe even confess how much I thought about her when I shouldn't. But before I could, her phone buzzed. She startled slightly, fumbling to silence it. A man's name flashed across the screen. She turned the phone face down, the sound of the call cutting off. Her jaw tightened. Ex-husband, she muttered. He doesn't get to decide when I answer anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to. She reached for a file, and as she handed it across the desk, her fingers brushed mine again. Not accidental this time. Not clumsy. Her hand lingered. The shock of it went straight to my chest. I froze, torn between instinct and caution. I should have pulled away, should have broken the moment. But instead, I let my hand stay where it was. Her eyes searched mine, questioning, daring maybe. My pulse hammered so loud it filled the silence. Then 3 quick knocks on the office door. We both jerked back like we'd been caught. The door cracked open, one of the assistants poking her head in. "Sorry, ma'am. Just dropping these off." She stepped inside, placing a folder on the desk. Her eyes flicked between us, sharp enough to make my skin crawl. The moment stretched too long. Elena gave a polite nod, the kind that closed a conversation. The assistant left. The door shut, Silence again. But this time heavier, charged. Elena's hand was still resting on the desk, inches from mine. She didn't move it. "You should go," she said, though her voice didn't sound like an order. I swallowed hard. Every part of me wanted to obey. Instead, I stayed seated, heart pounding, waiting for something I couldn't name. Were we about to cross a line neither of us could take back? The line, and an ending that hangs heavy in silence. I thought about leaving a dozen times that night. My bag was already packed, my laptop shut, but I stayed. Maybe out of loyalty, maybe out of something else I didn't want to name. Elena sat at the edge of her desk instead of behind it, arms folded loosely across her chest, staring at the floor like it might give her answers. She wasn't the same woman who commanded boardrooms during the day. The authority was still there, but stripped down, tempered with something brittle. "Do you know what they whisper about me?" she asked suddenly. I hesitated. Don't listen to that stuff." She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "They say I drove him away, that I cared more about my work than my marriage, that I'm cold." She lifted her eyes to mine, sharp even in their weariness. "Maybe they're right." I shook my head before I could stop myself. "They don't know you." The words came out raw, unpracticed. Too much. Her gaze fixed on me, and for once I didn't look away. It felt like stepping too close to a fire, heat licking at the edges of caution. "You shouldn't," she started, but stopped. Her jaw worked, searching for the right words. Finally she whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that." My pulse thundered in my ears. I forced myself to lean back, to break the stare, but the effort felt like tearing something out of myself. Then maybe stop looking back. The silence that followed was unbearable. I hated myself for saying it, hated how true it sounded. She pushed off the desk, closing the space between us. Not all the way, but close enough that I could smell her perfume again, warmer now, almost softened by the hour. "You're too young," she said quietly. "You don't know what this would cost." I wanted to agree, to laugh it off, to defuse the weight pressing down on us. Instead, the only words that came out were, "Then why are you still asking me to stay?" Her lips parted. No answer came. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the lamp filled the space, every second stretching, taut with the possibility of something breaking. She reached out, slowly, as if testing herself, and her hand rested on my arm. Not a fleeting touch this time. Solid. Present. My breath caught. I couldn't move. I couldn't decide if I wanted her to let go or hold tighter. Her eyes searched mine, and it felt like a question without words. A dangerous one. The silence grew thicker, more loaded than anything she could have said. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, "Tell me to stop." Couldn't. I just stared back, every nerve on edge, caught between fear and want. The room held its breath with us, waiting to see which way we'd fall, bringing revelation and forcing a sharp reaction. Her hand was still on my arm when the sound of voices drifted through the hallway. Laughter, muffled but too close. Elena pulled back instantly, her body stiffening, as though the air itself had betrayed us. Before I could speak, the office door clicked open. A woman stepped in, younger than Elena by maybe 10 years, carrying herself with a kind of easy familiarity. Her features were softer, but there was no mistaking the resemblance. "Elena," she said, smiling before her eyes landed on me. Then her expression cooled. "Working late." Elena straightened, her voice steady. "Marissa, what are you doing here?" "I came to drop off the files you left at home." She held up a folder, then looked at me again, lingering just a moment too long. "Didn't realize you needed company." The tension in the room shifted instantly. My throat tightened. Elena took the folder without meeting her sister's eyes. Marissa folded her arms. "Does he know?" Something flickered across Elena's face, and my chest constricted. "Know what?" I finally spoke. "Know what?" The silence was brutal. Elena exhaled slowly, like the words were burning her on the way out. Marissa thinks. She thinks I have a habit of pulling people too close, making promises I don't keep. Her sister's laugh was sharp. Not just me. Not just him. The air snapped. I looked between them, my head swimming. Wait. You mean? Marissa's eyes softened, almost apologetic when they met mine. Years ago, before you ever worked here. I thought she meant it then, too. The ground felt like it gave way under me. Elena's shoulders sagged, her hand covering her mouth as if to block words she couldn't take back. It wasn't jealousy I felt. It was confusion, betrayal, a sudden fear that I'd misread everything, that maybe I wasn't special at all, just another in a line of almosts. Elena! My voice cracked more than I wanted. She lowered her hand, her eyes meeting mine, raw and unguarded. It wasn't like that with you. The words were rushed, desperate. I didn't ask you to stay because I was lonely. I asked because I can't stop thinking about you. Her sister's jaw tightened. She turned to me, softer now. That's what she said to me, too. The room spun. I didn't know which truth to hold onto, which version of her to believe. Elena took a step closer, her hand trembling at her side. She's twisting it. I'm not who I was then. Her eyes locked on mine. You have to believe me. I could hear my pulse in my ears, my chest rising and falling too fast. Every instinct screamed to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. The power between us had shifted. Suddenly I was the one who had to decide. Elena's voice broke the silence, low and urgent. Say something. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Just the echo of the revelation hanging between us, rewriting everything I thought I knew. Their conflict. The office felt smaller than it ever had, the walls pressing in with every second of silence. Elena's sister had left, but the damage she'd stirred hadn't. The echo of her words sat between us like another presence neither of us could ignore. Elena was the first to break it. Her voice was unsteady, though she fought to keep it level. You don't have to stay. If you walk out now, I'll understand. That should have been my chance, an exit clean and simple. But instead of moving toward the door, I found myself asking, was she right? Her shoulders dropped, as if the weight she carried had finally been called out. She didn't look at me right away. I've made mistakes, she admitted. Too many. Times when I wanted to feel needed, even if it meant holding someone close for reasons I couldn't keep. But this? She lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine, fierce through the ache. This isn't like that. My throat tightened. How do I know that? The question landed heavier than I meant. Her hands clenched at her sides, then slowly unclenched, as though she'd made a decision. You don't, she said quietly. You can't. All I can do is tell you the truth, even if it's not enough. And the truth is, when I see you here, I don't feel like I ruined everything. For once, I don't feel alone. Her words hit harder than I was ready for. There was no defense in them, no polished control. Just vulnerability. I took a step toward her before I realized I'd moved. My voice was barely above a whisper. You scare me. That startled her. Why? Because I can't stop noticing you. Because every time you ask me to stay, I don't want to leave. And I don't know if that's weakness or if it's the only thing keeping me from feeling like I'm sleepwalking through my life. We stood there, two confessions laid bare, neither of us with an easy answer. Her eyes glistened, though no tears fell. For a long moment, she said nothing, just looked at me as though she was deciding whether to step closer or retreat. Finally, she whispered, "Then don't leave." The words sank into me, steady and trembling all at once. My chest ached with the weight of them. I didn't move immediately, afraid of what it meant if I did. So I stayed where I was, close enough to feel the air shift between us, far enough to keep the line intact. Her hand lifted, then stopped halfway, fingers curling in hesitation. She let it fall, not touching me. But her eyes never broke from mine, and in them I saw everything she hadn't said. Fear, regret, longing, a plea for something real. And in that silence, heavy and fragile, I realized neither of us had walked away. Not yet. Reflection, and a meaningful closing that invites viewer engagement. The night ended differently than I expected. Not with a kiss, not with a line crossed, but with the two of us sitting in her office, the papers long forgotten, silence heavy but no longer unbearable. Elena leaned back in her chair, her posture less rigid than it had been all week. For once, she didn't look like my boss. She just looked like a woman who had been carrying too much for too long. "I don't want to repeat the past," she said finally, her voice low, certain. "I don't want you to be another mistake I make and regret later." I swallowed hard. The part of me that wanted her, that wanted to reach across the desk and erase the space between us, hated those words. But another part, the part that understood her loneliness, her regret, knew she wasn't pushing me away. She was asking me to stay in a way that mattered more. I thought about her sister's sharp words, the accusation, the history I hadn't known. And yet, sitting there, I realized it didn't erase the moments we'd shared. The brush of her hand, the confessions, the silences that had said more than words. "You don't have to be perfect," I said quietly. "I don't need that. I just need to know this isn't temporary." Her eyes softened, something breaking open inside her. "If I give you honesty, will that be enough?" I nodded. "It's all I wanted." She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for years. And then, without dramatics, without hesitation, she reached across the desk. This time, when her hand found mine, she didn't let go. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was simple, steady, real. That was the moment I understood. What bound us together wasn't obsession, or loneliness, or even the thrill of crossing forbidden lines. It was the rare feeling of being seen, completely without pretense. She saw me, not just the young man in the office. And for the first time in a long time, I saw her. Not the boss, not the woman with rumors trailing behind her, but someone searching for connection just like me. When we finally stood to leave, the tension that had once threatened to break us now felt like something new, something fragile but alive. At the door, she paused, turning to me with the faintest smile. "Tomorrow we'll have to face the consequences." I met her eyes. "Then we'll face them." We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The choice to stay, to keep walking this uncertain road together, was the resolution neither of us had expected, but both of us had chosen. As I stepped into the cool night air again, I realized I no longer replayed her voice in my head with doubt or confusion. I replayed it with a quiet certainty that something had begun, something neither of us could undo. And maybe, for once, that was enough.